cut it down and diet blonde.
You've got a base set up. Get cut some racing stripes in.
That's why I've been growing this for so long.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
That's great.
All right, let's get into it. Bring on our first guest. Our guest for today, it is Helen Maroulis, three-time world and Olympic champion. Helen, great to see you. How you doing?
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm
you
doing
bet.
well. How about you guys?
I'm awesome.
Doing
I'm
great.
awesome. Thanks for being here. Man, it's been a minute, since we've chatted. I think right near the beginning of the pandemic, which is when we started the show. I know we caught up a little bit. And that was like I think late March. You just competed and won. You look great out at Henri Deglane in France. But what was and I know you joined the DMVRTC, and I guess how did you spend April through the end of the year, basically? Were you pretty much in one spot? Were you bouncing around? Was training consistent or maybe inconsistent because of COVID restrictions?
I would say it was pretty consistent for the most part. I was in Maryland and it's from my house and it's a kids club, and so we had private access. We ran Zoom technical sessions for the kids throughout the practices, and then I would just stay and train after. So I would say it was pretty good and definitely helped me to catch up on the 2 years that I missed out on.
Yeah,
So
I bet.
yeah, it's good.
Um,
Good for me.
How did that come about with Maryland? I know Alex Clemson became the head coach, and then John Morrison came on as the RTC coach. When were you first approached about coming on board there? And was it a no brainer, or did you have to think about it?
So I moved back home in December, and I actually moved home because I thought I was done wrestling. I just came home for Christmas break, and then my parents said, just we'll just get you some doctors out here and just stay here and recover. And then I kind of found out that uh, I was going to use wrestling to work through the recovery process because there were some psychosomatic symptoms. So I just called a local club nearby, and they recommended John. So I just reached out to him and asked if I could come in and drill for like 20 minutes, once or twice a week. And then as the symptoms got less and less, I kind of realized that I wanted to compete. And then John, I guess, got in touch with Alex, and they just, I guess they talked and they set that up. They set up the Maryland DMVRTC and brought me on. So it's really cool how everything just fell into place.
Wow. So you planned on, I guess, retiring, and you said you were using wrestling as a recovery, or as a what's the word here? Not therapy, but almost physical
Yeah,
therapy.
pretty much because I was done, and to me, I had really, really bad symptoms. I didn't really have like a normal quality of life, just for a normal person, not for an athlete. And it just laid in bed around all day, hoping like to get better and not to feel bad. And I just was working with my neuropsych, and I just kind of thought, you know what? A lot of the trauma happened in wrestling, and I think I just need to go back and out, like just be on the mat, figure out what not drilling it honestly, or and about coming back to competing. It was just seeing if this was psychosomatic, could I retrain my brain to not freak out in any wrestling environment or situation? So I would go wrestle for 20 minutes and go home and have anxiety attacks and have to lay in my bed in the dark for like 2, 3 hours. And then the next week I would do it again and it would be less. The next week it'd be less. And then it was figuring out, okay, is this just psychosomatic? Is there something physical there? So, and then it's just been awesome. Now I'm like 100% healthy and I'm just like, thank God. So,
Wow. I guess what was the when it got to be the worst? Was that before you moved back to Maryland, or shortly after you moved back to Maryland? And like I don't know how long were you had to be laid out for? You said the quality of life was like not good for even a non-athlete. I'm just trying to think about how
yeah.
bad it got.
Uh, It got it got it got pretty bad. I'd say from August when it first happened. Um, August, September, and October were the worst months. I mean, like it just, like couldn't believe that the brain or the body could respond in that way, and some of the stuff that I was experiencing. So wrestling wasn't even on my radar. It like not even a close thought. It was just like, will I ever be normal again? Will I get to have a normal life again? Would I be able to be well adjusted of that nature? And then when I moved home, my parents just kind of, I was actually just coming home for Christmas break and I didn't want to come home because I didn't want them to kind of see what I was. The very like first or second night, my parents sat me down and they said, you can lie to whoever else you want, but we know something's not right with you and you just need to stay here and be with your family and like we'll get through this together.
Um, you were lying to them, I guess, or trying to play it off.
Yeah. Well, like sometimes in sport, it's like a fake it till you make it. So
Yeah.
I was just like, let's just hope for the best.
What
And
did
it
you
was
think?
good. I mean, huh?
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, like it was good. It all worked out. I think sometimes just the unknown is really scary too. Like I talked to not a ton of, but quite a handful of wrestlers now. If they get concussions and they reach out to me, there's certain things that I can like, not that I'm diagnosing, but that I can help identify just things that I went through. I'm like, hey, if you're feeling this, if you're thinking these thoughts, I just want you to know that that's not you. That could be the concussion. That could be symptoms. Like, make sure you see a doctor. Make sure you talk to them about this, because I think a lot of times as athletes, we just maybe just internalize everything, right? And our only thought is like getting back to sport. But I think you need to take a step back and really look at your health.
Well, especially if like a hurt ankle or any part of your body that hurts, you're like just be tough and get through it and whatever. But obviously the brain, the brain's a lot more sensitive, which I'm sure you're
Yeah,
well aware. But what I wanted to ask
yeah.
is, when your parents sat you down and said you can lie to whoever you want, but you're not fooling us, right? What did
Mhm.
you think? Oh, damn, busted, or was part of you glad? Like, oh, fine, yeah, I'll spill it. This is
Mm.
how I feel.
I think a bit of both. I didn't I didn't want them to know really everything that I was going through. I mean, they knew some of like some bad stuff, but they didn't know everything. And then just I think it was just really helpful to hear that. And like I used to not, so one of my symptoms, I used to not recognize myself. So I would look, if I like did too much, I would look in the mirror and I didn't know who I was looking at. Like I would, so I would freak out and I would start crying and I would call my parents up and I'm like, is this me? Do I look like me? Is this like, and I would freak out and they would just kind of sit with me and like, yeah, calm down. And so we didn't know what was psychosomatic, if there was a region of the brain with facial recognition that's happened to people with concussions before, or if it was anxiety related, like no idea. So I just kind of had to work through that with them and with doctors, and they literally like, and it's just been nice because even obviously the injury sucked, but through all that, now we get to pursue this Olympic journey together. So they helped me heal through one of my lowest points, and then now we're kind of pursuing one of the most fun, highest points together.
Yeah. You mentioned something a minute ago. You said if other athletes or wrestlers get concussions, they can reach out. Hey, if you're feeling this way, or if you're thinking these thoughts, maybe it's not normal. Not recognizing yourself is really whatever you want to call it. Are there any other
Yeah.
like thoughts that cross your head that were probably due to this, that were just, I don't know, out there, or like you said, not normal? Maybe it's something that other people are dealing with.
Yeah, so what I was told by doctors, there's a thing called like caveman brain, and it's essentially um, like when you get concussed, your brain, not everyone, but like you can kind of go into this caveman brain mode where instead of being able to do like higher level processing and thinking, you just, it's just like real basic. Like if I'm talking to someone and they're disagreeing with me, instead of me being able to think about like, okay, this is their point, this is my point, it's like, no, I just like like let's fight, so and things too like eye contact. So people don't realize when you get concussions, like eye contact can be really hard because there's a really high percentage of people with concussions. Generally there's something that's happened with the eyes, whether like once like sitting a little bit higher, you have to retrain them, you have to do vestibular drills or ocular training. That's like most, for most athletes, period, it would just be really good to do any type of eye drills, right, to be sharp. So when you have a concussion and that's not there, eye contact can like produce horrible headaches, and then it can produce anger issues. And so sometimes, I had this one girl, she called in, she asked me for advice about concussions, and she just had one really bad. And I'm talking to her for like 20, 30 minutes, and then I just hear her kind of being really rude to me. And I go, "Oh, are you really angry right now?" She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you know why?" She goes, "No." I'm like, "Your brain's just done too much. I'm giving you a lot of information. You're trying to process it. Like, this is your sign that you got to go, like, go lay down, go lay down for a couple hours." Like, so I could pretty much gauge how much I could do in a day based off symptoms. And the doctors are going to explain this way better than I can. And I've seen a bunch of specialists all over the US. So I actually find the brain super fascinating.
I'm
And I
sure.
think that, yeah. So,
Um, I like the end of 2019, right? It was when this got real bad and you went home, I think, right? And then you started getting on the mat and doing some drills and uh, physical therapy or psycho maybe therapy, whatever you want to call it, kind of by being on the mat. Did it slowly be like, man, I'm kind of feeling okay. Maybe I will wrestle again, or was it just one day you look back and you're like, I feel good. I'm gonna wrestle. Or like, how did that, from assuming you were retired
Yeah.
to coming back?
So I it's like it's gonna sound really weird, but I just really had faith that I knew that I wasn't supposed to retire before 2020. Like I was like, I don't care if I never step on the mat again. I just don't want to 100% like be done because I just feel like something could happen. Like I did have a brief retirement, but that was just to mentally and emotionally allow myself to check out and see if that made me better, see if that was the right decision. But when I came back in January, it was just kind of like I just want to keep the door open. And so I remember it was about 3 weeks before the wrestle off in February, and I just called Coach Cal. So he does like my nutrition. Hey, I want to compete. Is it physiologically possible for me to be in enough shape where it's not a danger for me to wrestle, where it's safe, and that I can go do this. And so he wrote out a plan for me. He's like, yeah, you can do it. And I just had to like follow this plan and do my training and go into it. And I didn't go in anywhere near close to 100%, but it was still good.
I remember you telling us last time we talked that like even within a couple days of the wrestle off, you were like still very much on the fence. Like, I don't know if I'll do it. And then kind of very last minute, you decided to do it. Since that point, I mean, you've gone on to have already really excellent performances. Do you ever think back about like those couple of days before that wrestle off and like how important the decision to compete was and how close you were to not competing?
Yeah, I think back on that like quite a bit, especially when the pandemic happened. And I remember thinking the reason that I chose to do the wrestle off is because I knew that I needed to get on the mat before trials. And I was telling myself, well, no, you're not ready. You're coming off of an injury. You should take more time. And I was like, you know what? I really feel like I just need to get my feet wet again. And if I didn't, I would have been no national team spot, no income, like not had these opportunities, not been able to test myself. I qualified the weight, that was
Okay.
something that I also felt that I really only trust myself to do this. Like I'm gonna go do this, you know. So I'm super grateful.
Yeah. Then when the dang pandemic hits and they cancel or postpone everything for a year, I don't know. How did that sit with you?
Um, I mean, it made sense, obviously, from a health perspective for the whole world, decisions about health, my health particularly. So when this happened, it wasn't a big shock to me. I'm like, well, I've been adjusting for the last 2, 3 years, so I'll just readjust again. But there was one moment where I just kind of realized that I maybe had distrust in God and in the process about like, can I be healthy for a whole nother year? Like this is kind of scary, God. Can I? And I felt like he was like, well, if you can trust me from now till August, you can trust me from now till next August. And I'm actually like way healthier now, and I'm super grateful that I had that time because things really are starting to come together.
Sure. Henry Deglane was just this past weekend, right? Your
Mhm.
first competition, I think, since the wrestle off, right?
Yeah.
Physically and mentally and psychologically, how did you feel?
Um, Mentally and psychologically, I felt really good. I think I've competed for so long. I've been on national teams since 2008, so I have a lot of like miles on my body that I did forget my passport to weigh-ins, so that was kind of a rookie mistake. But other than that, it is kind of like riding a bike, and I was able to just get into my zone really quickly. Physically, um, wasn't really what I was wrestling wasn't. I was setting some goals throughout the day that I did not reach. So,
Okay.
but it's still good.
So it was you. We had Terry on Monday, and he mentioned he's like, we were just rusty. We're competition rusties. Maybe not everybody was as aggressive as I'd like to see. Women, ladies were forgetting their passports. Tamara forgot her bag. This, that, and the other. He's like, just all these little things that are, when you're competing and traveling all the time, you do them. But when you have this layoff, it's like, whoops. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah, no, I
Helen.
was the only one that forgot the passport. Yeah, that was all me.
Well, he didn't throw you under the bus. You just threw yourself under the bus.
Yeah, I know. Whatever.
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
Yep.
So okay, there's a couple things coming up. The Captain's Cup, but you're not competing in that because
Mm-mm. Because I'm gonna go to the tournament in Ukraine
awesome.
at
Yeah.
the end of February. So yeah,
Um,
excited for that.
and that's totally understandable. But for those who don't know, explain what the Captain's Cup is and what you're most excited about.
So the Captain's Cup is really cool. It's essentially where we have the six Olympic weights, and each of the number ones at those Olympic weights are the team captains. And then there's going to be a draft, and they're going to draft a full team, and all the teams are going to compete against each other to essentially see who's the best. And then there's prize money involved, which is always a good time. And yeah, I think we have our best ladies competing in that, so it's going to be really good.
Yeah, and that draft is going to be this Saturday, January 23rd. The event will be February 13th and 14th, streaming on Flow Wrestling. It'll be in Iowa. Um, and when you first heard about this, like especially the idea of the draft, what were your thoughts? Like, you ladies
Oh, I
picking.
thought I thought it, yeah. Well, it's funny because Jakara was out here training with me, and then Tamara, we had just caught up on the phone. So the three of us are on three-way, like discussing who our first pick is, and I don't know, I want this person, no, and but yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's really great for wrestling to kind of bring these new concepts in, and it's similar to other sports, but I don't think we've ever really done any kind of draft thing, especially not in women's wrestling. So these are really new opportunities, and I hope that the fans and young girls out there are going to enjoy watching it.
Yeah, and in your senior level career, how many opportunities have you had to wrestle in not just Team USA, but like a dual team against six weights? It's an hour. We're throwing down. Let's get it. Have you had many opportunities to do
Yeah,
that?
no, not many. I mean, really, the big team competition is World Cup, which is a blast. I think team events are so fun, and unless you're on like a college dual team, but World Cup is pretty much it. And then that's really never been in the US. So to have this opportunity showcased in the US as well is, I think, really great for wrestling.
Yeah, me too.
Do you have a guess at which captain you feel like is going to be the more strategic when it comes to the draft?
Mm,
Now that you're not involved, of course.
yeah, I mean, like I talked to Jakara, so I know who her top choices are, and I know who Tamara's are, but it's hard because in that draft you might not get your top choice, and yeah. So, so I'm really not sure. And I think we have really good depth, at a lot of the weights. Some of the weights, it's like all those girls are within 1 or 2 points of each other. Uh, so even if whether you get the draft pick that you want, I mean, there's a person on another team that's super competitive with your girl. So it's just you're just gonna have to show up and
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because I know just like anything, right? You have people that you're closer with than others, right? And within the women's team,
yeah.
and I might be better friends with her, but she might be the better
Yeah.
pick. You know what I mean? So it's like, sorry, friend, but it's like going on.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, we're in it to win it.
Yes, yes, I love the attitude.
Yeah.
Um, I guess also speaking of women's events, did you get a chance to catch Adeline versus Tamara headlining that card last week?
Yeah, that was amazing. Oh my gosh, that was so awesome. It's so cool to see them, both of them. They're so accomplished and that they headlined the event. And yeah, it was such a great card too. That one and the one on the following Wednesday. So
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was kind of put together last second, but that was
yeah.
a really good time.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Um, so will you be watching or potentially attending the Captain's Cup? I know you're wrestling like a week later, but
Yeah. Probably won't attend just to keep, travel down and training consistent right before you,
yeah,
but I'll definitely be watching.
cool.
So
What's your training going to be like um, leading up to this event in Ukraine? And who do you train with mostly?
I
And are
mean,
you training at the DMV RTC
yeah.
full time or other places?
Yeah, so we're not training at Maryland right now just because of COVID restrictions. So I train at the Capital Wrestling Club, which is where I've been training at the whole time. and just train with, John and some of the high school guys. We have a really good, um, it's national prep number 2 in the nation. His name's Meyer Shapiro. So train with him as long as he keeps his weight down. Just kidding.
Shout out.
But no, it's yeah. I know. I'm like, hey, I'm unfollowing you if you get above this weight.
Oh, snap.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. You know a thing or two
No,
about
just
cutting weight.
kidding. Yeah, not trying
Yeah,
to go back there.
no, not at all.
So,
Talk to me
no,
about
it's good.
John.
It's a great group.
Yeah, John Morrison.
Mhm.
He was an All-American in Oklahoma State, and he's coaching out there. And I've seen social posts, and it seems like you guys have created quite a bond.
Yeah, so when I came back to wrestling and I had just kind of trained at the club for, the 2.5 weeks, and I just turned to him and I said, "Hey, like I know this is kind of random, but would you just mind going to coach me? Like you just have to shake my arms out. That's it. I just need somebody in the corner, and I've worked most consistently with you, and so it really it developed organically. And the one thing that I really appreciate, and I think because we're close in age, is that he just recognizes that like I know what I need to do, and especially training and working through an injury, my work ethic was never questioned. My word was never questioned. Um, and I think especially as you get older, you're a professional athlete. You're going to be professional about those things. You're going to get those things done. So John was really good at just like filling in gaps or seeing things that I couldn't see and just contributing in that way and creating opportunities like with the DMB RTC. So, he's been great.
You know, Adeline talked about that kind of process of realizing when she was in a point of her career that she had a little bit more autonomy, that she knew what she needed. And Terry this week talked about that, like the importance of having athletes who can kind of recognize what they need. At what point in your career did you start to kind of have more complete ownership over your training and realize like, hey, I have been doing this for a long time. I know what I need, maybe even better than anybody else.
Yeah. I think that kind of, I think it happens throughout your career. It's kind of like you develop one move really well, but it's not the only move you do. You still have other moves, just they're not as developed. So there's certain things that from a young, maybe from like 5, 10 years ago that I just know. I know I need to eat this way, or I know I need to sleep this way, or I know that I only need this much this week out from competition. And then there's other things that I'm like still, figuring out now. But I think now I have more confidence and trust in myself to make those decisions. So it's an ongoing process. I know Adeline figured hers out pretty early on. For me, it's just been a little bit more in flux.
How does it feel kind of knowing that about yourself, but then also being part of a team like Team USA that has developmental athletes that are, 15 years old all the way up to senior level athletes who've been doing it for a long time. Do you recognize in other athletes like, okay, this kind of maybe group of athletes really needs direction from the coaches, but maybe this girl and this girl, like they should be taking their training into their own hands a little bit more. Is that something that you can recognize in athletes?
I'm trying. I think so, and I know I wanna coach in some capacity after, and I think it's an art. I think there's like a wisdom to it, and so one thing that I've been learning just kind of recently in my journey is that, or I wouldn't say learning, but just really being able to kind of notice more is just how individual something is for that person. And so I wouldn't tell someone how to do it because I don't know the road they need to take, but I would like help guide them in why do you feel this is for you? What's the thought process? And then you can kind of figure out, was this fear based, or was this because it worked before? Is this because this person really is, they really do, know what they need. And it's really cool because you look at the tournament like this weekend and we had what, four golds and two silvers. So all the girls are performing and we all do things differently. Um, so I think, it's really cool just to see that everyone's like kind of has their own system down and you can just trust in that.
Man, the development of this team has been really amazing in the last quad. You think about like, Sarah's been wrestling for a long time, but she's had a lot of her success, her best results in the last quad. Jakara, same thing. Tamira, same thing.
Mhm.
Kayla, same thing. What have you noticed in the team's development, or can you point to any one thing or a couple of things that have really contributed to all of the success that you guys are having now as a team?
I mean, if I would say anything, I would say it really just comes down to a decision. Like it just came down to a decision that you're like, I'm this person, I'm gonna do it. This is the thing I want, and like I'm just gonna find a way to get it done. You know, I saw that with Sarah. I've seen that in Jakara. I've seen that in Tamara. And and then you kind of always seen Adeline do it, right? And so I think last quad to this quad, it's just been the team, everyone just kind of individually like made the decision that they're gonna own this and they're gonna get it done. So we have like the team's so mentally strong, physically strong. I mean, we have like such a solid team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was crazy to watch this weekend. It was like, I mean, the record of the whole team was incredible, and yeah, you didn't have Adeline there, and it's just going to get stronger. How did you feel about the team's performance overall this weekend?
Oh, I thought everyone did amazing. Like, I know Terry talked about us being a little bit rusty, which is very true, but everyone's match that when I looked over and was watching, I'm like, oh, that's an amazing move. I want to learn that. Ooh, I want her to teach me that. Like, oh man, that was good. So I thought it was really solid performances.
You know, to his question and to your point about team like making a jump over this last quad, really, you've kind of seen it with the men's freestyle too, and Jordan doing what he's done, and a lot of the younger guys seeing and believing. I think you and Adeline doing what you've done, and a lot of these younger women seeing and believing. I think that's like when you said I'm making a decision. I think that's also like this belief, like she's doing it. Why can't I? And at least that's how I've seen it. Is like it's just like this billowing, I don't know, confidence and or energy around the men's freestyle program and the women's program. We're just like 17, 18, 19. You're just seeing like medals flying off and women really feeding off each other is what it seems like to me.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say even like the team cohesiveness, it's like everyone kind of knows that everyone's going to get the job done, and that's really cool. I feel like in years past it's just been like totally different levels or in different
Yeah.
headspaces, and so it's just yeah, it's really cool.
It's like the United States is believing as a whole, like, hey, we belong here. And the
Yeah.
men are pushing Russia and the women are pushing Japan. And it's not crazy to think
Mhm.
that we could win and beat Japan, right? And in the past, that's what
No.
about crazy, but kind of been unrealistic, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I don't think so anymore at all. I think Japan's one of those countries that you definitely have to respect and you have to be prepared for and you have to be ready for, but they're not gods and they don't have superpowers and we have such a solid team. So I honestly think this is the year we're gonna do it.
Do you guys have conversations as a team about Japan specifically? I mean, especially in 2016, I mean, you were not only preparing for somebody from Japan, but Yoshida, who was like kind of, I don't know, Mount Rushmore figure in women's wrestling, and it was like a major upset, but it was something that I'm sure you had to think about and specifically prepare for, not just physically and tactically, but like mentally. How do I believe that I can overcome somebody this great? Do you have conversations with other members of the team about putting Japan just into perspective? Like this is not, like you just said, like this is not a team full
Superpower.
of superheroes or whatever.
Yeah. Um, I don't I don't think I have to with the team that we have now, and that opportunity hasn't like it just hasn't come up. I mean, I've been like out of the loop for a couple of years, but like when Sarah was in town training with me, we had just talked, and I was asking her like, "Oh, what foreign opponents have you studied yet? What was your game plan, or what are you thinking? This is what I'm thinking," and like just kind of sharing thoughts. So no one's no one seems to be like shell shocked or like in awe of them. I think everyone's really just preparing. They're like ready to get the job done.
And I guess specifically to you, you said, the last couple of years, but out of the loop, or, it's been tumultuous to say the least. You went from awesome performance in 15, the amazing win in 16. I think you ran, maybe gave up no points, 37 and no, something like that. And 17 to like the injuries, you lose at Worlds. Now you think you're done. How has it been emotionally through this last quad, I guess?
So the day after 2016, because I journal every day, I wrote down just some notes, and I knew that I was planning to do another 4 years. And the one thing I wrote was that I just knew in like my heart of hearts that 2020 was going to be harder than 2016. And I thought 2016 asked for all of me. Like it took everything. life didn't exist after August 18th, 2016. Like I was so dialed in. So I'm not surprised that everything went the way it went. It was really difficult, but I just I think um, I think everything happens for a reason, and I believe that God can use all things for good. So the things that I went through, they weren't for nothing. They've made me stronger. They've made me a better person, a better competitor. Even the time away from the mat has allowed me to step back and appreciate the sport and to realize what I had. Retirement kind of sucked. And I mean, even now we went to France and I was honestly filming every 2 seconds. Like Tamara's like, stop filming it, and I'm in my head, I'm just thinking like you don't understand. I mean, from 2008 to 2018, I was going to tours. I was wrestling for Team USA. I was on national team. Like that was my life. I was just living out of a suitcase. I thought that was going to be that way forever. And then you just slam into this wall, and all of a sudden you're like trying to see if you can apply for a job without symptoms getting in the way of it. And it just made me realize like, wow, I just want to go back and appreciate everything even more. So now I'm documenting everything, and like, I think everything's so fascinating again.
Yeah, it's like fascinating perspective you have because most people are I don't know, a lot of people I'm sure have success and at some point you got to retire and then the next phase reality sets in. Maybe you can coach, maybe you can do whatever, but maybe you're just applying for a job and you got to do that, but now you get like a second go around. You're like, okay, that sucked. Let's go back to wrestling. So that has to be
Yeah.
yeah, that has to be awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely, you can get caught up in how hard wrestling is, or you can be in it and realize like there is better what you love. Like this is amazing. There's not instances in life where you get the hype of a tournament and the like energy and just everything, you can't that's not all. I mean, I think life's still amazing. I'm not saying that wrestling is the best part of life, but I definitely think that sometimes you just have to step back to appreciate how good you have it.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so I mean, do you think 2021 will be the end of the line, or do you think that we'll take it and see? Ask me this next August, or I guess that would be this August.
So my mom has this like eerie way of calling things like and it'll always be the most random kind of situations, but she told me last year, she's like and maybe a year or two ago, that she wouldn't be surprised if I wrestled till 2024. Um and I was like, no way, I'm done after this. But now that I'm really getting healthy again and I can trust that my body can sustain this, I don't know, I still love it. I still think it's like the best life, and it's fun, and yeah. So we'll see, probably.
I like where your mom's head's at.
Yeah, yeah, your mom's
Yeah.
awesome. Um,
Yeah, she keeps it real.
so that would be 2008 to 2024, like wrestling at the senior level on national teams, winning titles. That's a lot of years. Would you in 2008, if I'd have said you'll wrestle through 2021, would you have believed it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I used to say, I'm like, oh, I'll just wrestle till my body can't any. Like I was like, I'll just go till I'm 50. Now I don't feel that way, but yeah.
Wow. Okay.
No, yeah.
I feel like when people are younger, they always have more ambitious goals. Maybe they're like, I want to wrestle in 6 Olympics. I want to, and then you talk to them one or two cycles
Yeah.
later, and they're like, God, the knee, the head, the
Yeah.
hips, everything kind of. Maybe reality sets in a
Yeah.
little more. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. This has been fascinating. I'm glad to hear you're back. That's crazy to think that you were retired and probably just were accepting of that. Were you ever accepting of it? Or was it ever like I'm only retired because I can't because of the head because the trauma?
Yeah. No, I wanted to be done. It's funny because that's one of those mom moments that snapped me back out of it. I remember I was praying about it and I just didn't want to feel like I was giving up, but I wanted to be done. I just wanted to go into dance, and like just I never wanted to come back into the wrestling world again ever. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to do it. Like I was like, I'll never I'll never be around it again. And so I called my mom and I told her I was retiring. And she's like, well, if you're gonna be hesitant and be fearful of getting injured, then yeah, you should retire because then you'll get injured and that's just not the way to do the process. She goes, but do I think you could win a second gold medal? Absolutely. And then I just started bawling. And I'm like, like I can't give up if there's still potential left. And so, yeah,
Was the reason you
mom came
wanted?
through.
Was the reason you wanted? You said I wanted to be retired. I wanted to get done. I wanted to get away from the sport, right? Maybe never even look back. Was that because of the brain trauma, or was that because of a combination of pressure and making weight and and all the things that go along with it? I'm sure there's a lot more in those two things, but
Yeah. I mean, I think mostly kind of the brain stuff and then the situation. My mom also kept telling me for the last 4 years, you just don't seem to love it anymore. You don't feel like you need to do it. You have nothing to prove. And I just told her it's not that I don't love it. The way that I'm doing it is not enjoyable. And so it was almost like just kind of battling with myself. And then the injury just forced that change and it ended up being like a really big blessing. And so now I am back into it and I love it, just as much.
awesome. Well, I think I speak for the wrestling community. Then we're glad you're back in it. We're glad you're healthy. We're glad you're feeling good, and we were sure as heck glad to see you back wrestling in France last weekend. So we're running right down to the end of the line, but I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word about anything you might want to say.
Having me and to everyone who's supporting the wrestling community and to just all the young wrestlers out there, keep working hard. I know this pandemic's been hard, but there's really great stuff up ahead. So just keep chasing your goals and enjoy it and love what you do.
Thank you so much, Helen. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah,
And again, glad you're back, and can't wait to see you compete some more.
thanks. Thank you. Yeah, have a great time at the Captain's Cup. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
putting
Thank
that
you.
on.
Oh, we will. We're excited for the draft this weekend. Have a great day. All right, man. I swear every time I talk to Helen, it's a great conversation. She's insightful, and I'm just glad she's back. I'm glad she's happy. It sounds
Oh,
like she
yeah.
was in maybe a kind of a dark spot for some part of a couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember talking with her last time, and it was like so, like the decision to compete again was like so up to the wire last minute. And
Yeah.
now, I mean, seeing her back at full strength in France this weekend, it was like it's amazing. I mean, we have so many women on the team that are really really good, but when you're watching Helen, it's just like automatic. Like you're like, all right, this is going to be a win. It's just what kind of win? Let's find out. So
Yep.
amazing to have her back. She's like just such a pillar in that lineup. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how this women's team does, and she'll be a huge part of that.
Yeah. Yep, she sure will. I'm excited for it. And again, remember this Captain's Cup draft goes down this Saturday, January 23rd. The Captain's Cup itself goes down February 13th and 14th live right here on FloWrestling. So make sure you tune into that. And I think that's going to be it. David, I'll give you the final word.
Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. We have some pretty good D1 wrestling on the site this weekend. Arizona State is going to be at Utah Valley with Utah Valley and Wyoming, and Oklahoma State going to Colorado. They're going to wrestle Northern Colorado and Air Force. So I'm super pumped about that.
Bula Wall versus Andrew Alirez.
Bulu Allen, Andrew Alirez. It's only one of many good matches, so I'm super pumped.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Well, like he said, we're done. We'll take it out. We'll see you guys next time. For David Bray, I'm Mark Bader. Adios.